Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Alien students thought humans feared pain until they witnessed a tattoo. Professor Eric Vando adjusted his sensory membranes as he glided through the pristine corridors of the Galactic Academy of Cynical Studies, the most prestigious institution in the known universe for the study of alien species. His iridescent scales shimmered under the soft bioluminescent lighting that lined the crystal-clear walls, creating a cascade of colors that would have sent any Earth rainbow running away in shame. Another fascinating day of enlightening young minds about the peculiarities of carbon-based life forms. Eric announced to no one in particular, a habit he had picked up from watching too many human educational broadcasts. The thought made his secondary breathing holes whistle with amusement. The Academy, stationed in high orbit around the gas giant Nexus Prime, was a marvel of engineering. Its spiraling architecture resembled a DNA helix, a deliberate choice that made most of the silicon-based faculty roll their optical organs. But hey, when your funding comes from the Galactic Council of Higher Education, you learn to appreciate their flair for the dramatic. Eric's tail swished back and forth as he approached his lecture hall, causing nearby floating data pads to scatter like startled prey. The Department of Human Studies occupied an entire wing of the Academy, much to the consternation of the Amoeboid Collective, who had to share their space with 3 other departments. But given humanity's rapid rise in galactic society and their, well, let's say unique approach to survival, the expansion was deemed necessary. "Good morning, Professor Vando," chirped his teaching assistant Blip Blop, a gelatinous cube whose enthusiasm for knowledge was matched only by their ability to absorb and catalog it, literally. "Today's lecture on human pain tolerance is prepared, and I have updated the safety protocols as requested." "Excellent work, Blip Blop." Eric's facial ridges lifted in what passed for a smile among his species. "Though I still think the plasma shields are overkill. Our human subjects have assured us repeatedly that they won't spontaneously combust during lectures." The lecture hall itself was a testament to the Academy's commitment to inclusive education. Seats accommodated everything from methane-breathing giants to microscopic sentients in their environmental suits. The air was a carefully regulated mix of gases that somehow managed to keep everyone alive without making anyone too uncomfortable, a feat that had won the Environmental Systems team 3 Galactic Excellence Awards. As students began flowing, oozing, and teleporting into the hall, Eric pulled up his presentation on human resilience. The holographic display showed a rotating image of a human skeleton, complete with all its terrifying solid internal support structure. Even after years of study, the sight still made him glad his species had evolved with a more sensible external carapace. "Remember," he muttered to himself, checking his notes, "no more jokes about human endoskeletal systems being inside out." The last time resulted in a strongly worded letter from the Cultural Sensitivity Board. His third eye winked at the memory. Apparently, humans found the concept less amusing than he did. The hall was filling up now. He could see representatives from nearly every spacefaring race in attendance. There were the crystalline Lumerians, whose bodies chimed softly as they settled into their cushioned seats. The gaseous nebulons swirled in their containment fields, their thoughts visible as colorful patterns in their vaporous forms. Even a few members of the notoriously reclusive Shadow Collective had materialized in the back row, their presence marked only by the slight distortion of light where they sat. Eric's antenna twitched with anticipation. Today's lecture promised to be particularly interesting, especially given the new transfer student who would be joining them. He had reviewed the application himself, a human who agreed to assist with live demonstrations. The very thought made his primary heart flutter with academic excitement. The lecture hall's entrance portal shimmered as Nina Rodriguez stepped through, and the resulting collective gasp nearly depleted the room's oxygen reserves. Blip Blop quickly adjusted the life support systems as several Nebulan students began to condense from sheer shock. Nina was a walking canvas of color and artistry. Her arms were adorned with intricate designs that seemed to tell stories. Dragons breathing fire, spaceships soaring through cosmic storms, and what appeared to be a surprisingly accurate depiction of the Galactic Council's last budgetary meeting. Her neck bore a stunning recreation of Earth's solar system, and visible beneath her standard-issue Academy uniform were hints of even more elaborate artwork. "Greetings, everyone." Nina's voice carried through the hall with characteristic human confidence. "Sorry if I startled anyone. The translation matrix warned me that some species might find my appearance interesting." Interesting was an understatement. Three of the crystalline Lemurians had started resonating at frequencies that threatened to shatter their neighbors. A young Voidwalker had accidentally phased through their chair in surprise, and the Shadow Collective members were so fascinated they'd forgotten to stay invisible. Professor Vando's sensory membranes quivered with delight at the teaching opportunity. Class, please welcome our new transfer student, Nina Rodriguez from Earth. As you can see, she provides an excellent example of human decorative practices, specifically the art form known as tattooing. A forest of appendages, tentacles, and energy signatures shot into the air. Eric pointed to a hovering plasma being. Yes, you have a question. Professor Zix crackled nervously. My species database indicates that humans have pain receptors throughout their dermal layer, yet Miss Rodriguez appears to have voluntarily allowed someone to repeatedly puncture her skin with pigment-delivering devices. Has she perhaps suffered neural damage? Nina burst out laughing, causing several empathic students to experience spontaneous joy. No neural damage here, though my mom did question my sanity when I got the quantum physics equation set across my shoulders. More appendages raised. A multi-eyed arachnoid student chittered excitedly. But why subject yourself to unnecessary pain? Our research suggests humans actively avoid painful stimuli, yet you've chosen to endure hundreds of thousands of micro-injuries for aesthetic purposes. Well, Nana perched casually on the professor's desk. Much to the horror of the more traditionally minded students, humans have a complex relationship with pain. Sometimes we seek it out for various reasons: personal growth, artistic expression, or just to prove we can handle it. Plus, these tattoos tell my story. Each one marks a moment, a memory, or something I'm passionate about. Professor Vando noticed his students frantically taking notes, their various recording methods creating a symphony of clicks, bubbles, and quantum fluctuations. He decided to steer the discussion toward academic territory. Perhaps, Miss Rodriguez, you could explain the process. Many of our students struggle to understand why any sentient being would willingly undergo such a procedure. Sure thing, Prof. Nina grinned, causing a ripple of fascination among the students who were still trying to master human facial expressions. Actually, I was planning to get a new piece done this week. Part of my thesis project is documenting human body modification practices. Would your class be interested in observing? The resulting explosion of excited responses overloaded the universal translators for a full 30 seconds. When order was restored, Professor Vando found himself trying to maintain professional composure while his scales flickered through every shade of academic excitement. That would be most educational, he managed, while his teaching assistant blip-blop vibrated at a frequency typically associated with pure joy. Though we'll need to update the safety protocols again. Last time we exposed students to human recreational activities, the ethics committee had to hire additional staff. Nina raised an eyebrow, another gesture that fascinated her alien classmates. What happened? Someone showed them human extreme sports videos, blip-blop burbled. 3 quantum consciousness students tried to calculate the probability of survival and crashed the academy's main computer. And we're still trying to convince the hive mind collective that humans don't actually have 9 lives. Speaking of survival, a tremulous voice came from the back where a group of energy beings hovered. Our preliminary scans indicate that Miss Rodriguez has survived this tattooing process multiple times. Is this common among humans? Nina stretched, revealing yet more artwork along her collarbone. Oh yeah, my friend back home has twice as many as I do. She's a quantum mechanic, has a whole sleeve dedicated to string theory. Really helps break the ice with clients. The Academy's observation theater had never been so crowded. Professor Vando had to requisition additional gravity generators just to accommodate all the floating species who wanted to witness the demonstration. The room, typically used for studying microscopic life forms, had been transformed into what Nina casually called a tattoo parlor, much to the confusion of the linguistic department. Now remember, Professor Vando addressed the packed audience, his scales shifting to authoritative purple. This is a scientific observation. Please maintain your composure, and yes, that means you, quantum physics students. No calculating the pain coefficients in real time. We don't want another probability cascade like the hot sauce incident. The tattoo artist, another human named Rex Thunder, which several alien students assumed was some kind of warrior designation, was setting up his equipment. The sight of the needles alone had caused 3 gelatinous observers to temporarily lose cohesion. Professor Blip-Blop wobbled anxiously. Are you certain the containment fields are necessary? The energy expenditure alone is. After the great sneeze panic of last semester, absolutely necessary. Eric's antenna twitched at the memory. Besides, the ethics committee insisted. Apparently, some species consider voluntary pain to be contagious. Nina sat comfortably in the modified observation chair, scrolling through her datapad. You guys are going to love this design. It's a tribute to my time here. A DNA helix morphing into the Academy spiral architecture. Rex here specializes in scientific imagery. Rex, a burly man whose own tattoos seemed to shift in the Academy's specialized lighting, grunted appreciatively while calibrating his tools. Just remember, folks, no flash photography. Some of your visual spectrums make my hands tingle, and trust me, you don't want me getting jumpy with these needles. The recording equipment hummed to life. Sensors designed to monitor everything from neural activity to quantum fluctuations surrounded the tattooing station. A particularly enthusiastic group of mind students had even set up an empathy relay to share the experience among themselves, though Professor Vando strongly advised against it. For those unfamiliar with human anatomy, Eric began his pre-demonstration lecture. We will be observing the insertion of pigments into the dermal layer of Miss Rodriguez's epidermal structure. The process involves, yes, question. Entity 7. A shimmering mass of probability waves coalesced into a vaguely questioning shape. Will there be blood? Some minor capillary disruption is expected, yes. The resulting wave of murmurs sent the universal translators into overdrive. Several photonic beings dimmed their luminescence in what passed for a squeamish reaction. Guides, relax. Nina laughed, causing nearby empaths to sway with unexplained mirth. I've done this plenty of times. Though I do recommend the squeamish among you switch to inferred vision during the process. Less dramatic that way. Rex finished his preparations, the tattoo machine humming with a sound that made several crystalline observers vibrate in sympathy. Ready when you are, Nina. Standard pain scale updates? You bet, Professor. Your students might find this interesting. We humans use a numerical scale to rate pain, though it's pretty subjective. I'll be calling out ratings periodically for your data. Professor Vando's teaching tendrils waved with excitement. Excellent. Class, please note that humans quantify their pain experiences. The scale ranges from 1 to 10, with 10 being, what is it, blip blop? The teaching assistant had turned a concerning shade of blue. Professor, our preliminary calculations suggest that the level of pain Miss Rodriguez is about to voluntarily endure would register as a 7.3 on most species' consciousness termination scale. Oh, please, Nina snorted. I once stepped on something called a Lego. This is nothing. The room's tension ratcheted up several notches. A group of quantum observers had to be reminded not to split into multiple probability states from sheer nervous energy. The Shadow Collective members had unconsciously formed a support group in the corner, while the hive mind students were placing bets on how long it would take someone to faint. Rex cleaned the chosen area on Nina's forearm, causing several gasps as the disinfectant scent reached various chemosensitive observers. Last chance to back out, folks. Though I should warn you, this is pretty mild compared to the video of human dental procedures I saw some of you watching in the cafeteria. Professor Vando quickly moved to prevent a mass exodus. Perhaps we should focus on the artistic aspects. Miss Rodriguez, would you explain your choice of design placement? And, oh my, is that the machine's normal sound? The tattoo machine had sprung to life with a buzz that sent several sonic-sensitive species diving for their dampening fields. Nina just smiled, a gesture that many students were beginning to associate with impending human shenanigans. Data recording systems are at optimal levels, Blip Blop announced, trying to maintain professional detachment despite having shifted into their stress-induced cubic form. Quantum observation matrices are stable, empathy relays are functioning, and the emergency response team is on standby. Though they did ask me to remind everyone that existential crisis counseling has a 24-hour waiting period. Rex positioned the needle, causing a collective intake of breath from dozens of species using dozens of different respiratory methods. Ready? Nina gave a thumbs up, another human gesture that the xenobiology department was still trying to decode. Hit me. But remember, everyone, no matter what you see, this is completely normal. And yes, I'm looking at you, timeline observers. No attempting to alter the past to prevent this. We talked about this after the coffee discovery incident. The first touch of the needle caused a ripple of reactions throughout the observation theater. 2 vapor state students immediately condensed into liquids. The quantum probability students had to be reminded again about maintaining a single timeline. In the back, the Shadow Collective began stress-shedding darkness. Pain scale at a solid 3. Nina announced cheerfully while Rex worked on the outline. Nothing major, just feels like a cat scratch. Hey, Professor Vando, did you get those research papers I sent about human pain endorphins? Professor Vando's scales had shifted to a fascinating mix of horrified green and excited purple. Yes, though perhaps we should discuss them later when you're not being repeatedly stabbed with. Is he going faster? Rex had indeed increased the machine speed, creating a higher-pitched buzz that sent several sonic-sensitive species into protective bubbles. Better results with the fine lines this way. Need a break, Nina? Nah, I'm good, though I think some of our observers might need one. Blip blop, you're looking a bit non-Euclidean there. The teaching assistant had indeed begun to lose their cubic shape, corners rounding into impossible angles. Simply adjusting my observation parameters, Miss Rodriguez, though our empathy relay is registering some concerning readings from the hive mind section. A collective groan came from the hive mind. They'd made the mistake of maintaining their emotional link during the procedure. How are you continuing casual conversation while experiencing Category 3 tissue damage? Their spokesperson vibrated. Oh, this is nothing. Nina waved her free hand dismissively, causing several nearby students to flinch. You should see humans getting their eyebrows done. Now that stings. Pain scale still holding at 3, by the way. Maybe 3.5 when he hits the bonier areas. Rex switched needles for the shading process, and the resulting change in pitch caused 3 crystalline observers to develop sympathetic cracks. Professor Vando quickly adjusted their resonance fields before continuing his scientific observations. Note the subject's steady vital signs, he announced, his professional tone somewhat undermined by his trembling antenna. Despite clear evidence of dermal trauma, Miss Rodriguez shows no signs of distress. In fact, her stress indicators are lower than most species exhibit during standard atmospheric pressure changes. That's because this is actually pretty relaxing, Nina said, then laughed at the collective sound of disbelief that threatened to overload the universal translators. No, really, it's like a meditative experience. Some humans even fall asleep during sessions. The very concept of sleeping through voluntary pain caused a minor riot in the psychic section. Several reality weavers had to be prevented from attempting to repair what they perceived as a tear in the natural order. Speaking of sleeping, Rex commented while adding detail to the DNA helix. Remember that guy who snored through his entire back piece? Oh yeah, that was wild. Pain scale update. Hitting a 4 now that we're into the solid shading. Nothing compared to that time I accidentally touched my quantum physics professor's plasma containment field. A small group of energy beings in the front row began rapidly cycling through colors of distress. But our calculations indicate the nerve-ending stimulation should be pretty intense. Yeah, but humans are weird like that. We can ignore amazing amounts of pain if we're doing something we enjoy, like running marathons or eating super spicy foods or watching tragedy Hollywoods for fun. The mention of voluntary emotional pain was too much for the empaths, who had to form a support circle in the corner. Meanwhile, the temporal students were furiously taking notes, having finally given up on finding a timeline where this made sense. Rex paused to wipe away excess ink, causing several squeamish species to activate their selective vision filters. Starting the color work now. Still good? Never better, though I think we lost a few more observers. Is anyone keeping count of the fainting incidents? Blip Blop, who had managed to mostly restore their cubic form, consulted their datapad. 7 complete consciousness losses, 13 temporary phase shifts, and 1 interesting case of spontaneous mitosis from the binary being section. Still within expected parameters for human demonstration events. Professor Vando's third eye was twitching, a sure sign of academic excitement overload. Miss Rodriguez, would you say this experience is comparable to other human voluntary pain activities? Honestly, this is pretty mild. You guys should see what humans do in our gyms or beauty salons. Pain scale holding steady at 4, maybe 4.5 on the color packing. The resulting discussion about human beauty practices had to be quickly curtailed when several students began showing signs of extreme distress. The concept of waxing alone caused 2 philosophy majors to question their existence. Almost done with the academy spiral, Rex announced, his steady hands belying the growing chaos around him. Want to show them the UV reactive ink? The mention of ultraviolet properties caused the photonic beings to perk up from their horror-induced dim state. Nina grinned, that increasingly worrying human expression that the xenobiology department was learning to fear. Watch this, guys. She shifted under the UV light Rex had set up, causing her previous tattoos to glow in fascinating patterns. Cool, right? The quantum formula on my shoulder actually shows the wave function collapse when exposed to different light frequencies. The physics department representatives, who had been maintaining remarkable composure, finally lost it. Their excited babbling about practical quantum observations through human pain endurance had to be forcibly muted to prevent a cascade of unauthorized experiments. And done, Rex announced, wiping down the finished piece. Just under 2 hours. Not bad for a demonstration piece. 2 hours. Professor Vando's scales had gone pale. You've been enduring nerve stimulation for 2 standard planetary rotations. Nina admired the fresh tattoo in the mirror. Yeah, pretty quick session, actually. Pain never got above a 5, and that was just when he was hitting close to the wrist bone. Want to see my plan for the matching piece on the other arm? The resulting exodus of stressed observers nearly overloaded the theater's door mechanisms. Those who remained were torn between horror and fascination, particularly when Nina started discussing her ideas for a full back piece representing the complete history of human space exploration. Professor Vando, trying to maintain some semblance of academic dignity, cleared his throat. I believe we've gathered quite sufficient data for one day, though I must ask, Miss Rodriguez, why are you smiling like that? Oh, I just remembered. Next week I'm getting my industrial piercing redone. Anyone interested in another demonstration? The Academy's medical wing was in complete chaos. Dr. Plex Momentum, head of comparative xenobiology, stared at the readings with all 7 of his optical organs, while his tentacles frantically adjusted various holographic displays. This cannot be correct, he muttered, causing his bioluminescent spots to flicker in academic distress. Run the analysis again, Dr. Spark Nebula. Dr. Spark Nebula, a being composed primarily of ionized gas contained within a sophisticated environment suit, swirled in agitation. We've run it 12 times, Doctor. The human pain response readings are consistent. They simply make no sense. Nina sat on the examination table, cheerfully swinging her legs while various scanning beams passed over her new tattoo. Around her, the medical staff buzzed, floated, and phased in a state of controlled panic. Look at these endorphin levels. Dr. Momentum's primary tentacle jabbed at a holographic chart. By all accounts, Miss Rodriguez's body treated the 2-hour tattoo session as a mild inconvenience. The pain management systems barely engaged beyond baseline. That's because it really wasn't that bad, Nina shrugged, causing several junior medical assistants to flinch. Though the endorphin thing is pretty cool. Humans call it a runner's high when we get it from exercise. Dr. Spark Nebula's gaseous form condensed slightly in horror. You mean you deliberately trigger your pain response system for pleasure? Sure. Why do you think we invented roller coasters? Speaking of which, is the Academy ever going to lift that ban on human recreational activities? The engineering department keeps begging me to explain the concept of bungee jumping. Professor Vando, who had joined the medical team for the analysis, quickly intervened before anyone could pull up those particular files. Perhaps we should focus on the comparative analysis, doctors. Yes. Dr. Momentum pulled up a new series of holograms. We've compared Miss Rodriguez's readings to our database of known species. The closest pain tolerance we found is in the magma dwellers of Nexus 7, but they evolved in actual lava. A junior researcher, whose species communicated through interpretive crystalline formations, chimed in. The neural response patterns are fascinating. When we showed the recordings to the Hive Mind Medical Division, they tried to classify humans as a pain-immune species. We're definitely not pain-immune, Nina laughed. We just have a weird relationship with it. Like I barely noticed the tattoo, but I'll complain for hours about a paper cut. Dr. Spark Nebula swirled thoughtfully. Our analysis shows that human pain threshold variations are almost entirely psychological. You can simply choose to ignore pain. Pretty much. It's all about context. Humans will ignore serious injuries during sports games, but act like they're dying when they have a mild cold. We're funny that way. The medical team's collective confusion was almost palpable. Dr. Momentum's spots had shifted to the pale blue of scientific bewilderment. But evolutionary implications. Why would a species develop the ability to ignore survival warnings? Probably because we kept doing dangerous things that turned out to be useful, Nina suggested. Like the first human to eat spicy food probably had a bad time, but now we put hot sauce on everything. Did you know we have restaurants that make you sign pain waivers? The resulting medical discussion about human culinary practices had to be quickly redirected when several researchers began showing signs of sympathetic digestive distress.